What you don't want is 3 months of amazing growth that you can't replicate. What you want is a consistent path that you can show is I can sell this to you, I can leave, and the infrastructure exists. If your entire business is predicated on getting lucky and taking lottery picks, you might be wildly successful, but if you can't sustain that success, it's completely meaningless to anybody other than you. And your exit strategy is basically you give up after you end up working too hard and investing more and more resources chasing the next win.
Welcome back for another episode of You're Not Your ROAS. I'm joined with one of my faves. Me and him go way back. We actually had a podcast together. I was actually under his tutelage at one point. We helped launch his Facebook together. He's possibly the most blocked man on DTC, and he's trying to change that, people. And here's the PR tour starting here. I caught him right before Europe. Chuck T, how are you, my man?
I'm doing fantastic, man, and I do appreciate that. And it's for those that don't know, you and I met on the Facebook groups of gurus and nonsense folk many years ago, and you inspired me after I got kicked out of everywhere and had to do my own thing to actually do my own thing. And then literally all of this is your fault, Rabba. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, and I'm very appreciative of it. And man, I mean, this is 4 or 5 years later. Look at where we're at, man. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Cool, and I wanted to save this for you at this moment. And I was going to say something. It's like, my friends, you have a beautiful thirst there. I hope somebody doesn't murder it.
I'm not in my office, and I'm liquid death 1 down. We'll call it Charlie 1, Rabba 0 right now. Oh man, you're taking the lead going into the rapid fire. Oh wow, I should have known you optimizer. Well, let's get into it first. So
let's do it.
I am actually in Columbus right now, not in my Austin hub. Snowed in here. Where does this podcast find you, Charlie?
I'm on my back porch in Los Angeles, California. So. I'm seeing the sunlight. It's a little chilly, so I started a fire in the fireplace, and it's a beautiful day. Hey, I'm above ground in the promised land. I can't hate that.
I love it. How long have you been in Cali your whole life, or you were in Florida for a bit too, right?
Yeah, I grew up military brat. Graduated high school magna cum laude with a 2.73 because I was the only senior in my graduating class because I got expelled 4 times. And went to school in Florida to be a recording engineer, and I was a touring musician, ran a recording studio, and got into radio. But then this like awful sex tape with Hulk Hogan ended my radio career, and so I moved out to California, got a job doing $10 an hour, data entry at an illegitimate ad agency, running fake views for Disney stars on their brand new videos, and within about 2 years, I was a supervisor at Omnicom, spending $1 million a day or so, a couple of years before the Pixel. And, here I'm at now, a couple of 100 million in and over $1 billion in revenue driven, just trying to help people see the light, man. Just trying to help save some children and make dreams possible.
Yeah, I love it. The unicorn babies. That's incredible. So how did you get into marketing? So you went in from this data entry position, and then you got into this Disney pump factory, or like how did you get into that?
So while I was touring as a punk musician, I was able to figure out how to come home with money. And so I was very entrepreneurial from a very young age. I was actually, before that, even in Little League, I was the #1 salesperson for candy bars every single year. So I got a free Huffy bike on an annual basis, right? I got the $150 Toys R Us gift certificate. And I crushed everybody all the time. I was like 8, and I was just destroying people door to door. Nobody could compete with me back then. And I mean, hey, the same's true now. So when I was touring, I figured out basically how to come home with money. And when I was working in the radio, nobody else wanted to do it. So I got into a bit of selling advertising and stuff. And ultimately what happened is I started to figure out how to run festivals for money. I used to throw my own festivals. And ultimately what occurred is people started to ask me to help them back in the day of like MySpace bulletin boards and ICQ and AIM and shit like that. How do we get money, right? How do we make stuff work? And long story short, I was able to put myself through grad school, and I got an MBA, Harvard Business Review from a professional college that was aligning themselves with military bases. It was basically a decades-old relationship between Harvard and the United States military. Basically, had satellite locations all around the country. So if you were middle management as an officer and you needed a graduate degree, there was an opportunity. My parents both are military. My dad happened to be a professor of theoretical mathematics at that university, so I got kind of legacied in. And through night school, I got my MBA in marketing and business management that built on my bachelor's degree in music business management and my associate's degree in recording arts. So basically, I stayed in college because student loans were nice and I couldn't keep a job. And that put me out into a space. And when I landed in LA, I was working $10 an hour. I was 5 to 6 years older than everybody, but I had an MBA working a data entry job. And I basically automated my entire workflow. There was 10 of us in the office. I was doing the work of 20, and I watched all of the Wire at my desk in about 2.5 months, which tells you about how much work I was putting in. And
incredible show, by the way.
Absolutely excellent.
Top tier.
And
Top tier.
you know that agency went under. I stole some of their clients. The biggest client fired me because they put some money into Facebook ads. They were like, "Hey man, no harm, no foul." But I put $100 in Facebook ads and did better than I'm paying you $2,000 a month for on organic growth hacking. And so I licked my wounds, ate like shit, and the next day I put my credit card into Facebook, started promoting my band, and within a year or so, I was 7-figure daily spends.
That's crazy. What, Dirty Cakes still, or is it rebranded? What
Dirty Cakes back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, see, I know, I know.
Cakes. Yeah,
I did the research.
There you go.
We stalked you. That's cool, man. I actually had a similar experience.
Yeah?
Well, with the having the credentials in a really, not demeaning, but, I had just graduated with my economics degree, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so I just moved back to Indy, and I went back to the job I had before college, which was selling women's shoes at Nordstrom's, like the fancy women's shoes. And man, you'll never see like entitlement until you talk to some rich women that oh man, it was brutal. And then you'd have these really unique discussions of like, oh cool, what do you want to do with your life? Like, oh, what did you just do? Oh, I just graduated. Oh, that's cool. From what? Economics. And then you just get these weird looks of like, why are you selling women's shoes? And so it was very, very similar in that vein of like you having an MBA and doing data entry. Like it's a definitely a gut check. I love that, man. Is Dirty Cake still around? You still jamming?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, COVID put a kibosh on some
live
shows, but
yeah.
rehearsals happen on a regular basis. Music videos are out, records ready to release, and we can support it. And
you're the Axeman, right?
Yeah, at least once a week I'm in a loud room with giant fucking speakers playing guitar and a lot of fuzz. And what I lack in talent, I make up for in distortion and gumption. And we have a lot of fun.
I love that. How'd you get into playing the guitar? Is music in the family or?
Yeah. My dad had a guitar in the house, and he played in a church band and some bands in college. And I stole his 12-string when I was 8. And then I built a guitar in wood shop in 9th grade, and I had the bug. It was just like, I mean, literally, like I've got music, like it's what I do. I mean, it's just in the blood forever. And I grew up with listening to surf and to folk and to like oldies where songwriting was really good and it was following some really simple basics and things. And I just absolutely fell in love with the art, man. And if I could do one thing all day long, it's get attention, get loud, make money. And I mean, I feel like that's not a shock to anybody.
Oh, definitely not me. I love that, man. So you're running your ads now for your band. What did you find? Was there any challenges there, or was there some big learnings where you're like, oh man, I can really like, there's something here?
Yeah, well, it was really interesting. And what that did is it opened the door to some other opportunities. For instance, a buddy of mine who's now a mentor was running an ad agency, and there was a show called The Pitch. They used to air alongside Mad Men. And it was a reality show where two ad agencies compete to be the AOR, the agency of record, for a big client. And long story short, I'm on the very last episode. Basically, when they put me on the air, they canceled the show. And it was 1-800-Flowers wanting to do social gifting. And the idea was that you had to spend $100,000, but you couldn't do print, radio, or search, or email. You had to spend all of it on Facebook to generate revenue, which at the time was a ludicrous idea. Long story short, we won. And by head and shoulders crushed everybody else. And I really got to understand the opportunity at that time of promoting my band and then also running, e-commerce and getting attention and really understanding a core value that I still hold to this day, that paid media is organic, that you are amplifying, right? If your business model has to work, your foundation has to be successful. And the reason that you run ads is because you found something that works and you want to pour gas on that fire. And so that was at the very core of how I got to this. And I think that sadly, a vast majority of individuals don't come from that foundation because they got into Facebook when it was so easy. You could do everything wrong and still make money. And I see a lot of the students that I have in the Facebook Ads MBA program, and a lot of people that I talk to on Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere I'm at, the Facebook group that's, 12,000, 13,000 students. I would say 70, 80% of them come from paid works. And hopefully all you need to make a business work is good marketing. And the reason that they're failing is because they don't understand the aspect of how organic works in the ecosystem. And even the function of the organic algorithm is the backbone of Facebook's OCPM environment. And I was in arguments with people on Twitter even this week where they're absolutely right about like machine learning and about the learning phase and like, why am I going to spend money? One of the big questions we got from somebody, it was that like, why am I going to spend, money on, if I have a bakery, why am I going to target somebody that doesn't all this stuff? And the point is, even at broad targeting, and also the reason why the doom and gloom around Facebook is absolute nonsense is because, TikTok's shiny and it's fun and it's new and Amazon is great and Google's there and email and all that stuff. But the Facebook pixel is on 70, 80% of every website. The app touches billions of people in the world. Yeah, they lost growth. Who cares? They already have market share. They're no longer in a growth period. They're in a maturity stage. But what that means is they have in-house a data warehouse of a decade or more on millions and millions of people understanding what content they've engaged with, what groups they're in, what words they've used, but also what websites they've been to, what stuff they've done on those websites. So like if you're selling dog food, you can go broad. And if your ad says, hey, are you a dog owner? You want some dog food? Somebody that owns a cat or a snake or hates pets is never going to see your ad because Facebook ultimately is an organic machine trying to keep somebody's attention. Right. So the part of the equation that most performance first marketers fundamentally miss is that your ad functions as a business objective for Facebook to provide a greater user experience for the end user. And so where ads do the targeting, and anybody that wants to say that's a hot take, please DM me. I'll gladly help you understand it, is that Facebook is trying to show the content to people that they want to see. And that's one reason why interest groups are terrible for you, because what you're doing is you're forcing a bad experience on people, and it costs you extra. You have to pay a premium to force a bad experience, which is why your CPMs are $30, $40, $50. Like if your CPMs are over 20 or you're using ABO or interest groups, what that tells me more than anything is you don't know how to creative test properly abroad. And that's a big gap that most people have because they're not coming from the idea that content is meant to give somebody an enjoyable experience. And if you don't give a damn about the customer and you don't appreciate the value of your relationship with your business partner, you are going to struggle at business or any relationship. If my wife came to me and said, this is what she wants me to look like and this is the way she wants me to behave and these are the things she needs from me, and my response was to give her the middle finger and try to make money, it's not going to last. And there's absolutely no reason that Facebook is any different, or Instagram or YouTube or Pinterest or TikTok or any OCPM platform. And Pinterest is a gray area between CRM and search and optimize CPM, but ultimately Facebook did that better than everybody else. Their market share is indomitable. And if TikTok crushes for the next 3 to 5 years, they would need one to get adoption from 75 to 80% of everybody in America. Plus, there's tons of countries that ban it outright. They would need their pixel placed on 75 to 80% of websites. And at that point, they are going to have a data disadvantage on volume and integrity and context of what Facebook already has today. So when people are bearish on Facebook, my reaction to them is that you have to understand you've been spoiled up to this point. And yes, there's plenty of opportunities for arbitrage in other places. But if you're trying to grow a business, if you're trying to get awareness, there's $100 a day play and there's $1 million a year play. And especially if you want business growth, especially if you want to exit your business, especially if you want investors, what you don't want is 3 months of amazing growth that you can't replicate. What you want is a consistent path that you can show is I can sell this to you, I can leave, and the infrastructure exists. If your entire business is predicated on getting lucky and taking lottery picks, you might be wildly successful, but if you can't sustain that success, it's completely meaningless to anybody other than you. And your exit strategy is basically you give up after you end up working too hard and investing more and more resources chasing the next win. And I know that just because I've taken plenty of brands to market and investment bankers and public. And I think that that's a core misunderstanding that a lot of people have. And I was lucky enough to be an organic growth hacker in the very beginning, literally trying to hack the HTML code of MySpace bulletin board posts to get more people to show up to an open mic night. Like, that's where it started. And there's absolutely no difference between that and running a $100 a day, $10,000 a day, or $50,000 a day e-commerce brand. It's the exact same principle. It's just a matter of scale of the application. And yeah, so that's a long-winded story of how I got there. I don't even remember the question, but that's, I think, what the biggest message I really see all the time with people, and the advantage that I had, and I was lucky enough to be the guy that could be the organic growth hacker, got a job as a supervisor at an international conglomerate ad agency because I was on television. I had proven that I was the best on that show. And nobody else wanted to do Facebook because it was the ugly stepchild, because Facebook was a crazy idea. It was the weird thing that nobody wanted to mess with. And so I got all the Facebook contracts. And because I went to, I got a legit MBA in marketing and business management, I could run really high quality case studies. And because when Facebook would come trying to sell their wares and influence people to like, hey, maybe you should start advertising on Facebook because we think it's going to be big, I was the only person they ever talked to, which means I got millions and millions of dollars of case studies, and I got to develop the product with the engineering and the product team and the measurement team. A lot of the folks that are in leadership positions now, I met when they were, month one into the business. So I was at a very core element of just being in the right place, the right time, the right opportunity, the right preparation, in a space where everybody knew that they needed somebody, but nobody wanted to do the work. And I was just stoked that somebody gave me like health insurance, because I was used to being a junkie musician, like begging my parents for money so I could buy cigarettes and food today. So like, I was very lucky, and opportunity and preparation met in a time where nobody else was doing stuff. And so I was lucky to be at the point of being, the tip of the spear on stuff like lead gen ads. I literally did the case study to prove it. Or DPA, same thing there. Canvas, which failed miserably, but whatever. And to the point when Facebook released, when Facebook, was starting to talk about Tower 5 and CBO and creative testing and advanced matching, I had 7 or 8 figures of Facebook coupons to teach them what to do. And ultimately, the disruptor group are the people that teach the reps what to teach others. So by the time agencies and gurus are teaching lessons, what it means is it's their version of interpreting what a rep taught them 6 months, a year or two before. And that rep is teaching them something that a disruptor figured out 6 months to a year or two before that. So a lot of the folks that are complaining about the future of the platform are at best 2 to 3 years behind what they should be doing. And the gap between best practice and practical application is so vast that literally Facebook could stop investing in any innovation, and you would have 3 to 5 years of runway of continuous improvement. So I'm super bullish on the future of all of it, and I've kind of staked my claim on it for sure. And I mean, it's the same type of conversation of saying in 2001 nobody can innovate in email anymore, so it's stupid. Or in 2008, people were like, look, there's just no way to innovate or create new change inside of Google anymore. And the engineers are frustrated because they can't get anything else off the ground. And the seniority is just trying to push things. But you already have a Ferrari in the garage. Just because you're trying to build a spaceship doesn't mean the Ferrari isn't better than somebody else's, 89 Honda Civic. Much love to the 89 Honda Civic, but the Ferrari's going to crush it, right? And so yeah, like I said, I don't even remember the question, but that's the answer to it.
That is Charlie in a nutshell. I don't remember the question, but that's the answer to it. So there's a lot to unpack there. I love it. So to be fair, the market does not agree with you. Facebook took an absolute haircut, like a really, I think, plus 20 some. So you're buying the dip?
BTD? I have FANG. I have FNG, triple index.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So
I don't care.
You're in there. So a couple counterpoints there. So one, to kind of keep people up to speed, when Charlie's talking about OCPM, he means optimized CPM. So I'm actually not familiar with the other auctions, but Facebook uses something called a Clark Vickery Groves auction. And ultimately, it's just a fancy way of saying that you actually care about the community, or you can have some other outlier, this outlier being the community. The community is basically analogous to the news feed. And so just because you have a bunch of money doesn't mean you can ruin this news feed. And so that's why you have those bear bids, right? Where you have your bid, your estimated action rate, and then your internal and external ratings. And that's actually how you're getting into things, or that's how you're winning impressions in the auction. It's not just based on a proper, how much money do you have? So that's why when people say, oh, Facebook can just turn up ad rates, or they can't. The only way Facebook can make more money is offer more inventory, or people bid more aggressively in the auctions. Facebook does not have some lever that says, hey, let's turn CPMs up. Like, that's just not the fundamentals of it. Again, if you want to get nerdy and go look at the economics, it's actually really interesting. There's actually academic research that wasn't used for anything, and then Zuckerberg found it, or his team found it, and then implemented it. Anyways, I'm in the weeds now, but just kind of keep people up there, because some people might not know what optimized CPM means, where ultimately, and this is totally different, right, than if you're buying a TV ad or something like that, where you're basically getting a rate sheet, and we're going to say, we're going to give you X amount standard across X. There's no competition. There's no dynamicism. You're going to pay X amount of impressions. Your CPM is here, and you're going to get this many impressions, and then you're going to pay at that rate. And so that just kind of tidying that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And email, television, programmatic, display, native, those are all what we call inventory-based systems. And Pinterest and Google and Bing are all demand-based systems. Yep. And what Facebook brings to the table, what the optimized CPM environment brings to the table, is a qualitative metric on the cost of that inventory and the delivery of those impressions. So if you provide a good service to Facebook's bottom line, you're going to get preferential treatment in cost and delivery, which ultimately spikes your overall impression rate, which is why CTR is completely irrelevant. And I want a low one, because that means I reach way more people. And why CPC is irrelevant, because it's a metric of an output of 4 other things that's not actionable. And why even CPM is just a canary in the coal mine of saying, how good are you as an advertiser? And the honest truth is, if you're paying over $20, $30 CPMs, there's a dramatic improvement you can make on your business just by testing better, or by getting rid of high cost inventory that is hurting you on the bottom line, or just improve your customer service. What happens after the click is fundamental to your cost of advertising on the platform.
I totally agree with you there. And I would say that, so I'm not a huge CPM maxi. I'm more of in the middle, where I think CPMs are useful, but they're kind of second, third, fourth order fire alarms for me. Like, I'm not looking at these things at the first thing that's going wrong. But to your point, you can see some things. However, if I asked you, Charlie, the media buyer, would you rather have high CPMs and a bunch of conversions, or would you rather have low CPMs and no conversions? So this is where I get caught up when people use CPMs as like a first order indicator. It's like, who cares? If you're in the best party with the millionaires, yeah, I don't mind paying double the CPM. These people are buying, and every time they're buying 2x the AOV than these scrubs and these cheap CPMs are. And so, again, I think CPMs are important, but they're second, third, fourth order kind of they're not in the hierarchy. Like you need to understand, like if you're in the cool kids club, stay in there. Yeah, pay to be in there.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Like you want to be around the rich people and if it costs you more, that's fine. Because guess what? Do you want to be in a room with a bunch of poor people? And I don't mean to sound condescending. I'm probably using a bad analogy.
No, but at a high
get my
AOV
point.
product, you're making the point. Yeah. And to that point, I think I will tell people, and I'll die on this hill, the only two metrics that matter, honestly, there's only one metric that matters, but I'll give a qualification for second best, is spend. After spend, it is volume of conversions. But let me make three really clear statements. Number one, reporting is never going to be accurate. Number two, attribution is a complete nonsense lie built by digital marketing platforms to convince ad agencies to spend more money that they then taught marketers, and that was a generation ago, and people just still haven't been able to see through it. And number three, incremental lift is the only thing that matters. If you can't answer this question, if I spend more money here, does that generate a higher profit? And which investment is of the highest quality for me, that is most sustainable and the highest value asset for my business objective? If you can't answer that question, then you're dead in the water. And that is what the ecosystem ROAS doc that I built back in 2018 answers in a simple Excel spreadsheet, because I had a boss that was spending $100 million on television. Her attribution model was 5 minutes after the infomercial aired. Like, there's no pixel, but she was able to run $1 billion business doing that. And she left that and came to what we were doing. And like, I had to go in there 1 million times trying to prove the value of all of this stuff. And when I couldn't answer those questions, I realized I was trying to give a nickel answer in $1 million question. And so many people at the CPM, CTR, CPC, ROAS, all of these things, you are still so focused in the box that you can't see the forest for the trees. And the sooner you start looking at incremental lift across your entire ecosystem, the sooner you stop giving a damn about everything that people are worried about. Because you ultimately say, how do I make myself the best business partner to my vendor? And how do I maximize the opportunity? And if I'm maximizing the opportunity, I'm getting better every week, every month. Does that ultimately benefit my business? If the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, awesome. We got an action plan. And really it comes down to, maybe you have 3 yeses. Well, which one causes the most lift if you have a limited budget? Or if you have an unlimited budget, what's the correlation between them? And if you can't answer those questions, if you're not looking at your media buying in that way, then you're going to be really struggling. And the answer to all of those questions, none of those answers are ABO or creative type or bidding model. Those have nothing to do with it. Those are distractions of really shiny objects that ultimately prevent you from solving the $10 million problem because you're trying to figure out the $1,000 issue in front of your face. And if you go down the road of trying to solve for all those problems, yes, you're going to get somewhere. You can work harder and by force of will make things happen. Maybe you can get from 1 million to 5. Maybe you can get to 10. But you're never going to get to 100 because you can't work 10 times, 20 times harder. And ultimately, the more of these moves that you make predicated on the idea of disrespecting your customer and your business partner, the harder it is to even maintain that 6 months from now, a year from now. And the majority of folks that I see struggle are, I will say this, I don't see people that have figured out creative testing it broad, auto placement, auto bid, with dynamic ads and a CBO. I don't see those same people also saying that they're worried about the future. And the people that I do see constantly raising red flags and liking other people's tweets and championing other people's insecurities, they're all the ones that also aggressively avoid adopting what Facebook's been asking them to do since 2018. And again, it's a relationship. And if somebody tells you what they need from you in that relationship and your response is give them the finger, don't be upset when that relationship goes poorly. You can go out and try to find 3 other people to take advantage of, but eventually you're going to run out of room. And there's a big difference between trying to spend $1,000 a day at a profit and trying to build a $100 million business. And I'm in the business of giving people the knowledge, the awareness, and the expertise to make that shift. And I always tell people, like, if you're a media buyer, Your job isn't to spend that 500 a day, that 10,000 a day at a profit. That is not your job. Your job is to figure out, if my spend is $1,000, why can't it be 3? What is wrong in the business that prevents me from tripling my acquisition budget? If you can solve those problems, you are now a director of growth, which is what every Facebook media buyer could be in a flip of a switch. Because ultimately, that is how you grow businesses. That's how you grow brands. That's how you go to an investment banker and you say, my business is worth $100 million. And for what it's worth, most folks that run ad agencies that came into the game 2017, 2018, they've never had that conversation. I can't blame those people for not understanding that, because it's like trying to explain snow to somebody that's never seen it. Like, yeah, white shit falls from the sky and it's cold. Or explaining the ocean to somebody that's never left Nebraska. Like, yeah, that piece of water, it goes so far that it's flat at the end.
I think maybe a better analogy might be explaining water to a fish.
Sure.
Where you're so ensconced in it, it's impossible to get your head around, like, to step out of this mindset. But oh my gosh, we're already into the value add segment. You skipped over so many things. Of course, a Charlie T podcast is not going to be structured like normal. We're going crazy here,
sorry,
folks.
man. I'm passionate.
Okay.
I'm in love with this stuff.
Okay.
I just want people to see more success and less stress, because 90% of people are doing things wrong because they were poorly trained by somebody else that didn't know what they were doing. So I'm here to help.
Well, I think, too, touching back on kind of your organic talks, and me and Cody and Ash have been talking about that, too. And kind of like a little interesting mental model I was thinking of was like these communities, like they become foundational layers that you can then build skyscrapers on with your paid media. But Absolutely. What happened, in my opinion, to your point, there was just such a big bull market. People were building skyscrapers on sand. Mm-hmm. And then once that earthquake hit, their whole building fell down because they didn't have the foundational elements of actually, like, I think ultimately too what happened, there was just such the new seed was just such a Cambrian explosion in ad inventory. It was just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible, that people kind of swung too far into the quantitative element of it. And you just started having these quants that are just going in numbers. And at the end of the day, man, there's people behind these numbers. And like, are you making a connection? Are you generating value for them? Are you giving them a story that they can tell their wife or their husband or whoever, their significant other, their friends, why they're so smart because they bought your product? Like, it kind of sounds silly, but there's just a bit of going back to the fundamentals of, like, you know, would you want your product? Would you use your product? Would you tell your mom or your sister? Would you recommend it to your best friend? Like, and if the answer is there or no, you know, maybe that is probably a good place to start versus ABO or CBO. and again, this is just my points of view, but like, understand those fundamentals, and then those fundamentals can scale. And then to your point, like, this is actually a John Coyle quote, but it's kind of same, but different as you, where it's like, paid media is fuel. It's not the fire. And so like, until you have that fire, unless you're just going to pour gasoline on a match, it doesn't matter. I know, right? It's perfect. It just ties in perfectly. But anyways, I think that's really, a lot of the challenges is that there were things that worked, but it's not that they worked because the strategies were sound or the tactics were robust. It was because you're in a massive bull market. And if you were doing any semblance of anything, like, you were going to do well. And furthermore, you know, if you're charismatic and you had a great story, you were gonna be able to, you know, convince people to come along for the ride. And, you know, no judgment there. It's just, that was what I saw, was when people got really far away from the basics. And it's almost kind of the same view I have a little bit of biohacking, where it's like, dude, what's the point? Like, sleep, get your exercise in, meditators find some sort of mindfulness practice. Like, there's all these things versus like, well, I should eat bull balls at 2 a.m. and then I'll drink ram's piss at 1 a.m. And you're just like, I mean, maybe, but maybe if you kind of just get these fundamentals in place first, and these first principles, and you understand that, then you can really kind of start to get those other, you know, maybe 1, 2, 3 percentage point gains. But it feels a lot like sometimes people are spending dollars to save pennies. And that's just not my jam.
No, I love it. And I'll back that up with something. There's an old Yiddish saying that is, where it begins, so it ends. And if you take out the last 5 years of Facebook media buying, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're still in a spot where ultimately, can you be on the street corner and sell this product? Can you go door to door and sell this service? Will people be happy because of it? Because running Facebook ads or any paid media is a way of scaling that effort, right? Like if you
Correct.
can't go door to door and sell your product, don't be astonished when you can't trick a bunch of people on the internet to buy it. And really it's an escalation of the door to door salesman hires multiple salespeople, eventually leverages his exposure or her exposure by getting an ad in the newspaper or by making flyers, and eventually leverages that exposure by getting on the radio or getting onto television. But you can only afford that because your business is successful and because you can scale with it. And all we have here, Facebook is basically just television as performance media. But there's no difference. Like if your product isn't good enough or your service isn't good enough to get people to want to use it, then you're dead already. And the opportunity of the arbitrage of attention and, you know, Gary Vee's underpriced attention and all this stuff, that opportunity, look, there are other platforms you can go for that. But again, what you're talking about is, can I get a short hack to follow things up? But the business is built on the back of short hacks where you had really good marketers that could sell fish oil ultimately die. That snake oil salesman in the West got murdered every time, right? And look at Casper.
Yeah.
I think that's a great example of, we've seen so many brands come and go. And, you know, I think there's a few brands right now that are built on hype that I'm legitimately don't know if I'm terribly bullish on their future. And maybe I haven't got an investment in one end of that or the other, but I opened this chat with the liquid death thing, right? And maybe you got my preview screen on the liquid death use, who knows? But liquid death is building on the back of, they've got a product that people buy that is fundamentally not differentiated in the marketplace, but there's an ownership of the brand
0%.
identity.
Yep.
Right there is, it's LaCroix without flavor. Got it. It's the most boring flavor of LaCroix, and you have diehards. You know, you look at Last Crumb, right? It's supreme for cookies and costs as much as a pair of Yeezys, and you're stoked. And the point is, those brands, I think, will have a much better opportunity of using paid media 3 years from now than brands that I think are built more off of hype that I don't see as much backbone behind them. And again, I don't know their future, but, you know, I think, you know, not to call too many people out, but like, for instance, Athletic Greens, super huge, massive business. Everybody's stoked about it. But I feel like they grew too far, too fast on the back of too many unsustainable things to maintain that growth. And if you can't maintain that growth, ultimately what it is can you get to a precipice where you can suppress all other competition and gain a market share that makes you have an unfair advantage in the space? And I don't see that proprietary advantage. You know, if I was Mr. Wonderful at Shark Tank, I'd say, hey, you got a great business going there, but I can't pour fuel on this fire. And for that reason, I'm out. I don't know if that's the backbone of it, and I might be dead wrong. And I'd love to talk to the people because they're clearly doing very great work. But I think that there are businesses that are built to be evergreen. I think there are businesses that are built with an exit plan as the strategy of the development of the business. And then I think there are 95% of people out there just trying to spend money to make money today that aren't looking more than a month or a year out and have no concept of these things. And I just say that because I agree with you. That Cambrian explosion just changed the world so that so many people don't understand that that's not what it is, right? Like Game of Thrones, winter is coming, right?
Yeah.
Like we are here. Can you beat the Ice King? And the honest truth is, 90% of people can't.
Yeah.
So I think our responsibility as marketers that have been through this and appreciate it is to provide the education and the tools and the knowledge and the support to help those good people not lose the opportunity of achieving their dreams. And that's one reason why I so aggressively go after people that co-sign other folks' victimhood. Because the only reason you're not succeeding right now is because you haven't failed enough, or because you're willing to say, I can't. And if those are your mentalities, you should go get a day job right now, because you are going to fail at entrepreneurism. It's just not for you. You have to get kicked in the teeth every single day and come back and ask for more. Like, if you don't have that mentality, if you're not a street fighter willing to lose, if you're not David Spade willing to get his butt kicked every single time, if you're not Joe Dirt, you're going to lose. And I think that's what separates the folks like Ash and Cody and you and I from a lot of the other folks that are agency driven, that don't understand the back end unit economics of business development. And so I love what you had to say. And I know that was a very long little support of your opinion, but hey, look, if I don't talk on soliloquy, I have a hard time even opening my mouth.
It's a 2-minute minimum for Charlie. If you get him going, he's going. Okay, we are pushing up against it, so that we just kind of smashed the first and second segments together too. So now let's go let's go real quickly through the rapid fire, and then I'll toss it over to you. You can plug whatever you want, and then we'll wrap up the podcast. How's that sound, Charlie?
Sounds good to me, man. I'm here, and thank you once again.
Right.
As always, it's beautiful to talk with you.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, you ready for the rapid fire?
Let's go.
All right, mosh pits, overrated, underrated?
Love them. Underrated.
Underrated. Love it. Twitter, overrated, underrated?
Underrated.
Living in LA, overrated, underrated?
Underrated.
Whoa, 3 underrateds in a row. I know another one's coming. Steelers, overrated, underrated?
Underrated, always, buddy.
Had a tough one this year. Had a tough one. You guys have a embarrassment of riches of late. So we have an
embarrassment of riches, and we've never had a losing season under our current coach. Yeah. And hey, look, if our worst year is the majority of the league's, if the worst we do is what the Dallas Cowboys would love to have half of the time, we're doing all right. And that's not shade at you. I'm just putting in perspective because I know where your loyalties lie.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
And hey, look,
it's brutal.
If we have 3 8-8 years in 15, and it means I have to eat 1 or 2 right now, I might not even see that. So underrated.
You can't even hear. You have so many titles stuffed in your ears from the last 7 years. It's like,
yeah. Although I will say this. You need a demigod of a human being to compare against Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen. Like, if you don't have somebody literally blessed by virgins as the offspring of like a god having, sex with a human being, like if you don't have a Herculean backstory, you're dead.
Yeah, they're very good. They're all 3 top notch. I think I've lost the Lamar bet. I think Josh Allen's gonna really mature into something special. Or almost already has. He got. He just ran up against somebody greater. Yeah, somebody actually. I'll go to the next one, but somebody had a really funny tweet where it's kind of like the Patrick Ewing, Michael Jordan. Like Patrick Ewing was so good, he just bumped up against somebody better during his lifetime, and it just sucks, man. Yeah, it just sucks.
Yeah, and never got a title. Oh,
I know. That's what I'm trying to say. Dude, he was fantastic. Brutal. He was a very good player. TikTok, overrated, underrated?
I will say it's underrated, but I think the bullishness on it is overrated. But as a platform, it does not have the adoption it should.
Favorite city in California?
LA.
Oh, favorite meal and why?
Oh, dead animals with cheese and some kind of grain in any form you want to give it to me.
Favorite newsletter?
Ooh, that's a good question. I do like the Whale Mail, although sometimes I disagree with it, but I think it's really, really good to see what people have to say. It's a good temperature read. Like, for instance, this last one that came out, I will say I disagree at a fundamental level with the vast majority of the premise and the take by somebody that has me blocked on Twitter, so I can't even engage with them. But I do like it. I would say that is one of my favorites, what you guys have going and what Alex has going, because it is not discipline specific. And I think that helps people see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, I like that. Favorite place travel to and why?
Favorite place to travel to and why? I think my favorite trip that I've taken over the last few years was my wife and I went to Amsterdam 3 years ago in the winter. We were there to go see the Buzzcocks, and the lead singer died 8 days beforehand. And so we still went, and we were in Amsterdam, and went walking through the city, got lost in the city, and it started snowing because it was like 3 days after Christmas. And when you are lost in a European city that old and beautiful with snow coming down at midnight,
Oh, for sure.
how can you hate on that? It's a beautiful thing.
Magical, magical. Okay, last two. Favorite follow on Twitter?
Favorite follow on Twitter? Oh, I mean, can I put me down? No.
You can't follow yourself. What a Charley answer! Oh my gosh.
Hey, look, if you're a band, you should be a fan of your own music. If you're a writer, you should like your own books. If you're a filmmaker, you should be a fan of your own movies. If you're running a business, your business should be your favorite thing, or it's someplace to go. But without that,
favorite follow on Twitter that's not you. There you go. I've amended the question to not give you any wiggle room.
Got it. I love that. I'm gonna go completely not industry specific at all.
Love it. Love it.
And say my favorite follow is probably Pat Mayo.
Okay. What's the handle there?
Sports betting guy, has a great YouTube show. I've emotionally invested myself into hundreds and hundreds of hours of his YouTube. And I now know all the players. I know all the people in his circle of friends. And when I see content from him, it harkens back to so many fond memories over so many years and so many positive experiences that it literally just makes me happy. And he goes ahead and likes some of my sports bets half the time. And he got to see me turn, $30 and a couple 20-1 bets into a extremely nice number that I lost all on Chiefs, but at least he was there for it all. And that was a beautiful thing. It's one of those things. If you create enough content out in the world and you put stuff out and you're very personable, people feel like they're your friend even though they've never met you. And he does that better than almost anybody else in the world.
Love it. Okay, last question. If you could have dinner with three people, dead or alive, it's a 4-person table, you're there with 3 other people, they can be fictional, non-fictional, who would they be?
Oh, man. 3 people, dead or alive. That's a good question. So let me answer it quick. One of the people I'd love to have at that table, let's see. I would love to be at a table. I think I would love to be at the table with Mark Cuban. I think he's really smart, and I think we see eye to eye on a lot of stuff.
IU alum.
I tend to agree with him on a lot of things. And then if I had to give somebody else in that room just to keep things interesting, I'd love to be at a table with Robin Williams. I think, I don't know if he turns it on or off ever, but I think he's truly brilliant, or was. And I would absolutely love to be in the presence of somebody like that for even 5 minutes. And also, I think something that would be really interesting for me to get into, kind of going way more old school, would be I'd love to sit at the table with some of these world conquerors, like the Genghis Khans and the Alexander the Greats of the world. I would say probably Sun Tzu, just because I think The Art of War is probably the best business book ever created. And to understand where somebody came from to write all of that stuff and their learnings and their history and what's going on, I think would be so fascinating, because all of these folks are experiences and storytellers. And I'm going to surround myself, not people I want to have a beer with, but people who I just want to experience their presence. And I don't know, maybe he's a really boring guy in person, but I sure love his writing.
Love it. All right, Chuck T, you made it through. Rapid fire. Congratulations, my man. All right.
All right.
Plug whatever you need to plug. Tell people how to follow you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Absolutely. So first off, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm back. But yeah, so to plug stuff, 1, follow me on all the socials. 2, Facebook Ads MBA program is my core offering right now. And basically I teach people through the art of learning Facebook how to be business development folks, how to project manage their way to things, basically how to scale businesses, make exit strategies, and be a CMO or CEO. By covering disciplines from testing to measurement to planning to organizational structures, documentation, project management, accountability, and transparency. And I legitimately don't think anybody, I have not seen a competitive offer in the marketplace. So I highly recommend people check that out. And you can go to apply.facebookdisruptor.com to see my latest masterclass on half the things you'll learn in there. Plus, you get a couple of freebies. So go for that. And ultimately, if you are willing to be uncomfortable and have your assumptions challenged by empirical data with somebody willing to have a conversation with you, I would say go ahead and follow me. I would love to have those conversations. And that is what I really try to surround myself with. I want to be uncomfortable. I want to grow. And I find that my number one objective is I have reached a place where it is more fruitful for me to spend my time sharing my knowledge and helping people succeed than to try to succeed myself. Because I'll be honest, I've made it. I'm good. And I get to put my head on the pillow every night feeling good about myself, doing esteemable acts so that I can be full of self-esteem, because my days are spent helping people achieve their dreams. And every day I get to see people be successful. And every day I get to see the light bulb go. And every day when the world is full of folks that say that you've lost hope or there's nothing there, I can be a light in that. And that makes me feel so good. And that's a fundamentally different place than I was 10 years ago. And I'll finish with that. 10 years ago,
Beautiful.
I was a junkie on the edge of death, struggling to make money and pay my rent. Today, I get to make people's dreams come true. And the only difference between me and anybody else is I had the experience and the time willing to do it, and anybody else can start their life over right now. There's nothing stopping you from doing it. Just be willing to say yes and figure it out. And that's the best advice I could give anybody. So, Raba, I appreciate it, man. I don't have a signature sign off, so I'll let you take it. But thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Charlie. It's always been a pleasure. Hey, you can find us if you want to get more involved in Triple Whale at trytriplewhale.com. We actually just upgraded our Twitter. We're at Triple Whale now. We cut the try off. It's cleaner that way. You know what I'm saying? Little shout out social network. And then we also have, as Charlie said, a really, really great whale mail publication that goes out every Tuesday, Thursday. Tuesday's a fancy essay, and then Thursday is kind of a morning boo wrap up. Chuck T, you're the man. Go sign up for Charlie's program. We'll see everybody else on the flip. Thanks so much for the time, Charlie. Enjoy Europe. Have a safe trip, and then we'll see you when you get back. All right. We'll talk to you soon, everybody. That's 19 in the books. Thanks again, Bubba. Bye.
Bye.